Dan Ives, Managing Director of Equity Research, Wedbush Securities, joins us again for this Google unveiling to tell us, I guess, the good and bad of this unveiling. What was your reaction to these new products?
I mean, let's start with the good. Look, in terms of technology, I think significant enhancement in terms on the camera technology. I think some modular changes. And look, this is important. They could gain more share from Samsung in the Android market. I think the bad news is it's an uphill battle. I mean, it's still limited market share, and the smartwatch is a good step in the right direction, but they're late to the game. So they got some jump balls ahead. They got the products. Now it's about execution.
It's odd because, you know, they essentially control the Android. I mean, it's their market, the Android market. So you would think that making the phones or making the gadgets that connect with the Android, it would just be a natural winner. And I think a lot of us thought that when they released their first version of the phones. But in terms of getting market share away from Samsung and Apple, they just haven't gotten the traction that I think a lot of, at least investors, expected them to get.
Look, they were late to the game. Apple and Samsung have essentially been a duopoly in terms of them owning the market. And you look at Google, I mean, their DNA is software or search or algorithms, not hardware. And also the distribution, as you guys talked about, distribution's an issue for them. And now for them, look, they did the Fitbit acquisition in terms on the watch side. That was a step in the right direction. But now for Google, they got to basically decide, do they want to double down, expand distribution, or otherwise they're going to be I'll call them a tangential player unless something significantly changes.
When you mean distribution, are you talking about the T-Mobiles of the world in terms of getting the product out, or are you talking about something that's more direct to consumer?
It's really about the carriers, and I think that's been a big part of their problem. I mean, they're almost the little kid at the little table rather than where Apple and Samsung sits. And I think Google recognizes this, and I also think they think that there's significant share gains they could go after in Samsung, which has obviously had some stumbles on some of their products over the last year or two, especially foldable. But also they're going for a medium price point, and in a tough macro, could be some share gains ahead for them.
If you were advising Google on how to, I guess, win, even though I know you said they're late, but it doesn't mean they can't win something. They can at least get second place or maybe a strong third. What advice would you give them?
Well, I think first off, I believe when it comes to the actual models, I think they got to go through the carriers. That's one. They got to be aggressive on promotions. I think the second is they could look at acquisitions, specifically on the software piece, expand that mobile ecosystem that you only get that in terms of a Google phone and a Pixel. And I think the third is that they ultimately really have to decide, in terms of the watch and wearables, how much they expand this. Distribution's the limiting factor for them. If they're going to do this, you can't ultimately be half step, and they got to ultimately significantly expand. I'd say in the hundreds of millions of dollars distribution.
The wearables, I mean, everyone's talked about how big this is supposed to be over the next decade. It's a gazillion-dollar market. But it seems to me they have to decide if they want to be an OEM. Do they want to run the back-end software to these wearables, or do they actually want to have their own brand rather than partnering, say, with Nike or Lululemon in getting that, as you call it, distribution out there?
Well, that's exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head. And they got to figure out who they want to be. And now, look, this is the first step. I mean, it's only the first version, but there is significant share out there, not just within the Google install base, but going after the smartwatch market. Fitbit was an acquisition and now needs to pay dividends. But there's an opportunity here that they could go after. But they need to make sure for the consumer that they understand this is a Pixel watch, it's Google, and not sort of cross-marketing, which I think has been a problem for them, especially in some of the partnerships.
All right. Dan Ives, good stuff there. I'm going to go check out the phones myself because I think a couple of us here in studios are in the market for a new phone, so the timing of this is quite good. Dan Ives, Managing Director, Equity Research at Wedbush Securities. Good to see you.